Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Ox Talks. It's Monday, April 22nd, 2024. Hope you're all having a great start to the work week. Been here at the office all day today reviewing a very complicated business transaction. My client is selling a business. It's a $7.5 million transaction, so it's high stakes, high stress. The client's selling a going concern, goodwill, a piece of property. It's also being used in the business. And so the agreements are many pages in length: asset purchase agreement, a non-compete agreement, escrow holdback agreement, indemnity agreements, all these things that go along with a transaction of this size. So my goal is to protect the client, make sure that we're redlining appropriately. We're going to be exchanging comments. And so I just want to share that with you. I do enjoy the transactional stuff a lot more than the litigation. Unfortunately, litigation is bread and butter type work, but after all these years, I just feel like, from my perspective, a lot more gets accomplished when you are doing transactions. You can see some results. In this case, someone's going to get to buy into a fantastic business. My client's going to get to basically retire, and so it is rewarding. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. I want to jump right into a couple things for today that I saw that I think are very important for all of us to be aware of. Before I start, a good friend of mine lent me a book to read. I don't do a lot of personal reading anymore because I read so much here at the office and for my job that I just don't find it, I don't like to do a lot of personal reading on my off time. This book is entitled The Wisdom of the Bullfrog: Leadership Made Simple but Not Easy. And it's by a U.S. Navy retired Admiral William McRaven. And you guys, if you're interested in the book, again, it's a very easy read. I don't know if that's coming out backwards or not, but it's a very easy read, not a long read at all. I took my time getting through it, and the chapters are broken up in terms of experiences that he had overseas in various countries of the world, and lessons he's learned over his career, from when he first got into the Navy SEALs and trying to qualify for the Navy SEALs, all the way through many of the operations he conducted. And he was the leader, I believe, or the commander of all of the Special Operations Forces, Navy SEAL forces across the world at one point, and he was the guy that headed up the Bin Laden raid. So again, not delving into his beliefs or the politics. I don't know anything about the guy. I just liked what the book expressed in terms of life lessons I think that we all can gain something from. And that's why I thought it was important to share with you. Some of the takeaways from the book that I thought were important is, number one, to be a leader, you have to be, and that doesn't matter, you don't have to lead 100 people or 1,000 people. You may just be running an operation and have an answer to clients or to patients or to your customers. And to be a leader, you have to be able to make decisions. So many people are paralyzed when it comes to making decisions. They're scared of their own shadow. In order to do that, you have to be decisive. And look, that means you have to gather and spend the time getting as much information as you can. Do your due diligence. Put in the time to study whatever it is and learn. Once you have the information, then make a decision and move on. Be a leader and be confident. Will you always make the right decision? No. A lot of times the decisions that you make will be the wrong decision. But if you did the best you could and you stand behind it, that is, I think, is what is important. And actually in this book, he said several decisions he made throughout his career he thought would be career ending because they turned out to be the wrong decision. But he worked harder and he overcame that to, again, gain the confidence in the people that depended on him and that were looking at him to see if he was a leadership caliber material. So I think that applies whether you're starting out in a company or whether you own or run your own company. I think that is a very valuable lesson. Next, be humble. One of the chapters I appreciated the book was him sharing how throughout his career he used to go down on the front lines, not necessarily the front line of war, but he would be down, in the kitchen. He'd go down to the laundry rooms. He would climb up in the security towers. He would meet with everybody from the bottom up to make sure they knew him, they understood his goals for the organization, but more importantly, to gather information and to just understand what they were feeling and what they were encountering and what they liked, what they didn't like, and to get a pulse of what was going on in his organization, which I think is really, really important to be a leader, show leadership skills, but also to just be humble. I see so many people that have lost that, and they believe they're entitled, and the attitude, it just reeks of this arrogance. And I see it a lot in my career, and it drives me absolutely nuts. So the fact that he says to be humble, I thought was a very big takeaway. The next was take responsibility for your actions. We talked about it a second ago. Those actions won't always be the correct course of action, but take responsibility, own up to it. So many people simply do not want to take responsibility for the actions they do. The society now seems that, everybody gets a hall pass. Everyone gets a freebie or a do-over, and so they never have to really understand the gravity of the decisions they're making, and that there are consequences, good, bad, or indifferent. But if you make a decision, the ones that are easy, the decisions that are right, those are easy to step up and say, look, I did a great job, pat me on the back, I made the right decision. It's the times that you don't always make the right call. And, there are repercussions from that. So then what do? Well, then you have to work even harder to step up, own it, take responsibility, let the people that were affected by the decision know that you're going to make it right, and just be responsible. We have a lack of accountability in this country for many people across all sectors of our society. You know that, and not the least of which is in the government right now. And then, of course, lastly, what he says is, if you can stand in the mirror every morning, and when you make a decision, can you say that you made the decision morally, legally, and ethically? If you made the moral decision, the legal decision, and the ethical decision, that's the best that you can possibly do. So again, if you think that might be an interesting book for you to pick up, please do so. Next story I want to share, and it goes back to the title of today's show about poking the bear. And this is frankly terrifying, very, very scary. I guess over the weekend, when the House passed the spending package that is going to send $60 billion to Ukraine, it also snuck in that package what's called the Repo Act, which paves the way. The Zero Hedge today explained how it paves the way for the administration to confiscate billions in Russian sovereign assets which sit in U.S. banks. It says a summary of the Repo Act, H.R. 4175, says, it reads, this bill requires or authorizes various actions related to the confiscation and disposition of Russian sovereign assets, which include funds and other property of Russia's central bank, direct investment fund, or Ministry of Finance. And so under the bill, the president must require U.S. financial institutions to notify the Department of the Treasury of any Russian sovereign assets being held at such institutions. The president may confiscate any such assets subject to U.S. jurisdiction, it continues, and confiscated funds and the proceeds of liquidated property must be deposited into the Ukraine Support Fund established by the bill. The now approved bill further specifies, and this is insane because these financial institutions now are going to have to report if they are holding these assets on their books. All types of financial institutions, whatever they might be. Says the Ukraine Support Fund shall be used by the Department of State to compensate Ukraine for damages caused by the Russian invasion. The Ukraine Support Fund may also support an international body or mechanism for reconstruction and rebuilding effort in Ukraine, humanitarian assistance to the Ukrainian people, or other purposes which support the recovery of Ukraine and the welfare of the Ukrainian people. there's been a pushback, the article says, by a lot of the EU leaders because they have thus far resisted, it says, mainly on concerns, and from my perspective, extremely valid concerns, that it would undermine global trust and confidence in Western banks. Moscow, it says, could also see what it deems theft of its foreign funds as essentially an act of war. And that's what I believe they're doing. They're out today. The Kremlin has already responded. A Putin spokesperson, the article says, Dmitry Peskov, has said, quote, "We are very skeptical about this because this is essentially the destruction of all the foundation of the economic system. This is an encroachment on state property, on state assets, and on private property. By no means should this be perceived as legal action." It says this is illegal, and accordingly it will be subject to retaliatory actions and legal proceedings, the Kremlin official said. And look, it's not just limited to what is going to happen with the Russian assets. I believe that they probably will be confiscated. I'm not going to weigh in on whether that's the purpose for it is justified or not. But the point is, it sets a precedent. And for a second, you think that every other country around this world, certainly that has assets invested, financial assets invested in our institutions, are watching this. And countries that do not are also watching this. And it seems to me that what it's going to do is it's going to completely chill any foreign entities, any foreign banks from investing their assets, countries investing their assets into the U.S. Because if the U.S. decides wrongly or correctly that they are at odds with this country for whatever reason, look what's going to happen. So if that were to start cascading here with countries pulling their assets out of our financial institutions, it would literally be the last straw. It would knock the last leg or pillar out of the foundation of all of our financial markets, all of the financial assets. Think of what it would do. We already don't have the ability to keep our own inflation down, to keep our own people fed, to keep our people, our citizens with jobs. And if you start having foreign money simply pull assets or start selling their U.S. treasuries, it is going to be a disaster for this country. So I wanted to share that with you. It was something that kind of got snuck in to the bill over the weekend. I don't know how anybody could think that that is not a disservice, again, to the American people. Let's not even talk about the $95 billion in funding, none of which is being used to either solve the border crisis or to try to pay for the immigrants that do come over the border, pay for them to be housed, to be fed, then to be taken care of. And so it's very, very, very disheartening. It's hard to think that this is anything other than completely incompetent leadership, or it's being done to break down this country. But I'll let you guys weigh in. Leave your comments below. I certainly like to hear everyone's input. And to that point about the border crisis, there was another article I saw yesterday, came out of the BBC, and it says what's happening now is Texas has been successful in curbing the amount of illegal immigrants flooding over their border. We know the last several months, Governor Abbott down there has been taking some aggressive action. So now what's happening is the problem is becoming, let's say, incrementally worse at the southern border in California, at San Ysidro, which is just down by San Diego. So this article says, in San Ysidro, some 16 miles south of wealthy San Diego, crossings were up 85% in February from the previous year compared with Texas, which saw illegal entries dip during the same period. The BBC's U.S. partner CBS reported that in January, the border crossings in Del Rio, Texas, recorded a few hundred apprehensions a day compared to 2,300 daily migrant crossings in December. So there's been a real impact there because of the leadership. The migrant flow shift is due in part to the Texas governor's clampdown on the migration and the Mexican authorities tightening security across the border as well. The sheer number of people arriving has overwhelmed resources, though, in San Diego area after migrants are apprehended and processed at a facility near the border. Local officials told the BBC that up to 1,000 people a day are being released at city train and bus stops. 1,000 people a day. In the absence of transitional centers, it says, Border Patrol agents are now dropping off some 900 people a day at bus and train stations in San Diego, a city of around 1.3 million people. So we have 900 people a day minimum. They're now simply just being dispersed into the community down there. Obviously, they're not staying there. They're spreading out across the state and to other states around. And I want to share that with you. We'll keep updating you. This is getting worse, not better. The last article I want to share with you briefly is again out of the Zero Hedge. It talks about commercial real estate foreclosures. And this is going to start rearing its ugly head. It was in the forefront of the news cycle a few months ago. But listen to these figures. The latest report from the real estate data provider ATTOM, ATTOM, shows CRE foreclosures topped 625 in March. That's up 6% from February and 117% from the same period last year. ATTOM has been tracking commercial foreclosures since 2014. The number of foreclosures is approaching the peak of 889 in 2014. So again, we're going back a decade to find a point where in history we were this bad off with commercial foreclosures. Regional banks provide a bulk of the financing in the commercial space. It says the ongoing mess in the lending space due to tighter conditions adds pressure to the CRE downturn. Banks are expected to set aside more money to cover potential CRE losses. And it says last month, Federal Reserve Powell came out and said that they've identified the banks that have high commercial real estate concentrations and said that it's going to take, and that's in office and retail, and they said it's going to take years for that problem to be worked through at those institutions. Data from a recent Treasury Department's Financial Stability Oversight Council warns office vacancy rates have climbed sharply in recent years, reaching a record of 13.1% at the end of 2023. It says Morgan Stanley has come out and warned this year that the office prices could plunge 30% due to sliding demand. And it says with sliding demand comes a massive amount of supply. Morgan Stanley pointed out that most of the oversupply is in offices and apartments. And it says, for those wondering why you can't just convert that office space into affordable housing, Goldman says that prices must drop 50%, for housing conversion to make sense. It says Powell has a rolling crisis on his hands, and the goal is to save the fireworks, of course, as before or after the election. So that's the last article I want to share with you today. It's going a little bit long, but that Russian asset confiscation and seizure article, guys, is I think it's going to get really ugly on that one. Markets did well today because I think they believe that the Middle East crisis calmed down. Gold and silver got pummeled pretty good. So let's keep an eye on all that. Jeremiah and I discussed yesterday that these assets are not going to go. They're not going to go up in a straight line. The market's going to have pullbacks, which it did last week or two, and you start to see these go. They ebb and flow. So gold was having a tear. It pulled back, I think, about $60 today, pretty substantially. We'll watch on everything. Keep a watch. Please get your workouts in today. I'm going to go get my workout here in about an hour. Stay healthy. Eat well. Work out. Do all those things we talk about. Train. Stay diligent. Times are getting tough. They're going to keep getting tougher. Thanks for watching. Talk to you all tomorrow. Bye.